Hi, my name is Eric, and I review theater, theme parks, and immersive events in Southern California, and I'm so excited to talk to you today about the last 5 years at the Hollywood Bowl, which I just saw last night, starring Ben Platt, Rachel Zegler, and conducted by Jason Robert Brown, the show's writer of the last 5 years.
Take a carriage ride to Central Park, but it wouldn't be as nice as a summer in Ohio, where I'm sharing a room with a former stripper and a snake. Wait, I could have a satchel full of dollar bills, yours for all the nation's skills, bills to make a lion purr. I could be in line TV, the British Queen, look like I was 17, still I'm certain every part of me going slowly panning, 40 miles east of Cincinnati.
If you don't know about the last 5 years, it is an off-Broadway musical that premiered back in 2001, had its first off-Broadway production in 2002, and this year is celebrating its 25th anniversary. And so to celebrate, there is this concert version that has been going around. This production was just in London last week at the Palladium. It was in the Hollywood Bowl last night, and it is also going next week to the Radio City Music Hall in New York. If you don't know the last 5 years, it is a 2001 off-Broadway musical that chronicles the 5-year relationship between Jamie and Kathy, one of them being a writer, one of them being an actress. However, what is most well known about the show, alongside its very upbeat pop rock score, is its narrative framing device, that being that in the show, we have Jamie's story, which is told chronologically from the beginning of the relationship all the way to the end, and Kathy's we see from the end going back to the beginning. The two actors in the show are rarely ever seen on stage together except for right in the very middle of the show when their paths cross as they are moving forwards and backwards through time simultaneously. If that sounds a little confusing, that's okay. The show is really more of a song cycle show than it is a fully staged musical most of the time. And it really is a showcase for two very talented actors anytime the show is done. So, who better to showcase at a venue as large as the Hollywood Bowl than Ben Platt as Jamie and Rachel Zegler as Kathy? And it is so interesting that a show that was written to be such a small, intimate piece has had such a rising star trajectory over the past 25 years. Jason Robert Brown himself has said that he wrote the last 5 years to be a show that could be performed in a living room. So you're taking this show that was purposely written to be intimate, that started in a very small off-Broadway space, originally with Norbert Leo Butz and Sherry Renee Scott. It had an off-Broadway revival back in 2013. It had a film version in 2014 with Anna Kendrick and Jeremy Jordan. And it was only last year that the show had its very first Broadway production. And so the show has sort of scaled up as the show's popularity has grown over the decades. So for a show to go from a small black box theater all the way to a Hollywood Bowl-sized venue, you have to wonder, does the drama of the show scale with it? And my answer to that is kinda. I mean, Ben Platt and Rachel Zegler are two of our most skilled performers, I think, working today. They are absolutely generational talents, and I think that if you're going to have two names that are going to fill the Hollywood Bowl, Ben Platt and Rachel Zegler are the two names that can do that. And I was of two minds for most of the show as I was watching it. The first half of my mind was going, oh my god, it is so incredible to see these two talented performers completely own the space and fill the space as large as an outdoor concert venue like the Hollywood Bowl, and oftentimes by themselves, because this is a show where the two performers are rarely seen on stage together. And the other half of my brain was going, this show is way too small and way too intimate for me to actually get fully involved because of the way that the show is written to be very small and intimate. It's a small stakes show. It's about a relationship. It's not about Jesus Christ. Like Jesus Christ Superstar at the Hollywood Bowl, which I did think was a show that garnered the space and the magnitude of the piece and the place it was staged. I mean, the Hollywood Bowl is a venue for massive concerts, for film concerts, for movie screenings, for big, huge, giant-scaled productions. So to have a show that was on the scale of something more intimate I was impressed that Rachel and Ben were able to fill the space in the way they did. However, I was kind of left going, I would love to see these two do it, but in a space that is not so massive. And that's not to say that I was disappointed, and I think that's because I had my expectations tempered. I do not think that the Hollywood Bowl is the best venue for theater. I do, however, think that it is a great venue for showcasing talent. And if that's what you wanted to see, a showcase of two of our most talented young musical theater performers, then yes, that is what I got last night. And I do think it is great casting to have Rachel Zegler and Ben Platt in these roles, not just because of how damn skilled they are at singing and belting their faces off, but also in the context of the show, this is about a doomed relationship where both of the people in this relationship make bad choices and are kind of controversial people. You will often hear people talk about the last 5 years saying that they are either Team Jamie or Team Kathy. However, relationships are not so black and white as the show was kind of about. People have different perspectives, people have different ideas of what they want or who is responsible for what things. And so in casting a show where you know that the audience is going to have very intense feelings about the people in the show, to choose two performers who are two performers that people have a lot of very intense opinions about, like Ben Platt, who is one of the youngest Tony Award winners for his performance in Dear Evan Hansen, but then was also heavily criticized for his performance of Evan Hansen in the film version of the same show he won the Tony for, and as an actor who has had a lot of controversy for simply being a Nepo baby, for having a lot of insider connections. A lot of people criticize him and say maybe he's not as deserving of the recognition that he's got, despite his very obvious skill and talent. And then over here you have Rachel Zegler, who is known for her breakout performance in the West Side Story film from a couple years ago, one of the youngest Golden Globe winning actresses, but is also very controversial for having a lot of intense political opinions on the internet that have somewhat gotten her in trouble in the past. Most notably with Mark Platt, who is Ben Platt's father, who also directed her in the filmed version of Snow White from a couple years ago, to then put these two people together on stage in a show about people who are clearly talented and skilled, but also kind of controversial. I think that is such brilliant casting. And then put the meta aspect of the casting aside, and you still just have these incredibly talented people in the show. Of course, this is going to be the theater event, one of the first major theater events of the year in Los Angeles specifically. And that is why I and every other gay guy in the city of Los Angeles had to be there to see this show last night. So, as a presentation of a classic, iconic musical theater score, directed and conducted by its original writer and starring two of our greatest young musical theater performers today, the show was great. As a telling of the story of the last 5 years, a very deeply intimate and subtle relationship drama, it did not work for me at all, unfortunately. So I mentioned how the last 5 years is a show about one character moving in chronological order and the other one moving in reverse chronological order. A very interesting conceit, but not one that I think that this version necessarily set up very well. And that's okay. I really honestly feel like this version of the last 5 years is meant for people who are already fans of the show. In no way would I recommend this version to anyone who wasn't aware of how the show already worked. But I don't think that this version did any favors to sort of explain how the narrative framework works. Because in this version, when the show starts, you have Ben Platt come on stage as Jamie, you have Rachel Zegler come on as Kathy, they come in to meet, they kiss, and then he walks away, and then she immediately starts into the first song of the show, Still Hurting, where she is talking about how the relationship has just ended, how Jamie has left his wedding ring, left her a letter. And I think that's such a hard place to start the show if you haven't yet explained the conceit of how it works. And Still Hurting, which is the very first song in the show, is a very sad song, but kind of a bummer place to start. And I do feel like Rachel Zegler definitely had some shakiness at the very start, which, understandably, she is by herself on the Hollywood Bowl singing the very first song of this show. But I also don't think that the staging did her any favors to set up why we should be immediately invested in her anguish to start with. And this isn't meant to sound like a critique as much as it's meant to sound like an observation, but I do think that Rachel is at her best when she is high energy. For instance, A Summer in Ohio, I think, was probably the best moment of the entire night for me because it is the biggest musical theater song where she's doing a kick line and she's playing different voices and she's doing all these fun little silly prop work moments. That is the moment that got a few standing ovations mid-show. And then on the other end of that, I think that Ben Platt is at his best in this show when he is a little more dour and a little more sad energy. I think his last two songs near the end of the show, If I Didn't Believe in You and Nobody Needs to Know, are his best moments, because if you saw Dear Evan Hansen, you know he's got that puppy dog face and that dour, sad little tremble that he gets when he's sad. And I think that that is where he's the strongest. And then reverse it, I think that his higher energy moments, like Shakes a Goddess, which is not his best moment either. And again, none of this is to say that they were ever bad at any point in the show. I just think it's interesting that one performer's strengths are better in higher energy moments and the other performer's strengths are better in lower energy moments. But they're both still always good the whole time. They're never bad. They're still so good. I just wish that there had been maybe more of a middle ground where both of them were at a 10 out of 10 the whole show. But again, it's the Hollywood Bowl, and that's a big venue to hold captive for a full 90-minute show. And so you have these songs in the show that are written to be performed by a performer by themselves, but directly focused at another person who is on stage, but not on stage with them. What do I mean? In the Shmuel song, Ben Platt as Jamie is singing to Kathy the entire time, and it's a long 7-minute song, and you can't just have Ben Platt staring at one place the whole time at a person who's not really there, because he's on stage by himself, even though we know that Kathy is there, but just not literally there. But you're going to have to change focus at some point because you're going to need to play to all sides of this space. And so sometimes when Ben Platt is singing, he's singing to Kathy who's not there, but she's over here. But then he's singing to Kathy who's not there, but she's over here. And the focus of where the person that is being sung at is always changing and not super clear. And so I do think that like the emotional thread of like, these are two-person scenes with only one person on stage, and yet it's always moving where they're looking. And I think that is just, again, I don't really know the solution to that, because I would be bored if I was watching Ben Platt stare at one spot on the floor for 7 minutes, but I'm also getting confused as to like, what is Kathy? What is she running around the room like a chihuahua? And again, and this is no one's fault. This is just the nature of the piece as written, butting up against the scale of the space in which it's being presented. But can I just say, the Hollywood Bowl is not a place for prop work. I'm sorry. I can't have Kathy picking up a wedding ring and you expect 10,000 people to see a wedding ring? Or Ben Platt open up a box with a watch inside of it? Are we all supposed to see that watch? Granted, there are video feeds in the Hollywood Bowl. And so from where I'm sitting, I'm watching the stage and it's all the way over here, but then there's also like a big screen with a camera that is giving close-ups of what's happening on stage. And I just think it's kind of a cop-out to pay the money that people pay to come to the Hollywood Bowl just to spend, I would say, 70% of the show watching the screen live feed of what's happening, because what's actually happening is too far away to see clearly. I don't know. I'm glad I paid $25 for Rush, but if I was paying more than $50 for this show and I was looking at a screen more than I was watching the performers on stage, I would be a little bummed about that. But then putting all that aside, there are moments in this version that did actually get me there emotionally. I think that the next 10 minutes, which is the song in the middle of the show when Jamie and Kathy do actually come on stage, meet together, and have a song together for the first time in the show, that is when it really just soared for me. When you're getting Ben Platt's vocals and Rachel Zegler's vocals harmonizing, working in tandem, and you are really seeing them actually see each other and be in love, and also feel the trepidation, and also you in the audience are feeling the sadness because you already know the fate of these people. You know, you get to the very end of that song, and what you realize is that, well, now that we've met in the middle, Kathy has to keep going backwards to the beginning of this relationship as Jamie keeps moving forwards towards the end of the relationship. And Ben Platt as Jamie puts this coat over Kathy, and then she kind of walks back to the back of the stage, and we see her begin to sing the reprise of what was going on at the very beginning of the song when Ben Platt was about to propose. And then you see her in the place at the beginning of the song where she is about to be proposed to, and you realize that now things are going to swing in the other direction for her. I do think that Rachel Zegler played that moment so beautifully, because it's the most hopefully sad part of the whole show for me. And she gave this beautifully, hopefully sad expression. It's almost as if the characters in the show know what's going on even though they don't know what's going on. Does that make sense? It's a show. The characters know they're in a show. They know what's happening. They know it's doomed. We've been here before. Shows repeat. Like Hades Town. Same sad song, but we're gonna sing it again. And I was a bit confused in a fun way, and I don't want to know the answer to this thing I'm about to ask. But was this show set in modern day, or was it set in the year 2000 around when it was written? Because the last 5 years is old enough to be like a period piece now, essentially. And the costuming suggested the year 2000. Ben Platt had acid wash jeans and chunky shoes. And then you also have, at one point, him holding up a really chunky, like, blocky mobile cellular phone. And then also in A Summer in Ohio, Kathy is singing about seeing Jamie's book at a Borders in Kentucky, even though Borders is a bookstore that's been gone since the year 2000s. So perhaps this is a period piece, or perhaps it is set in modern times and we've just come so far back around in fashion that early 2000s is in again, because now you just have Gen Zers dressing like their parents did. I think it's funny that it's that either one could be true, and it doesn't necessarily change how I feel about the show. I just thought that was a funny observation. Another one of the very best parts of the show for me was We Can Do Better Than That. That is Kathy's song that is sort of near the end of the show as we're nearing the end of her reverse chronological journey when she is taking Jamie on a car trip to go see her parents for the first time. It is my favorite song in the show. I think a lot of people would say it's their favorite song in the show because it is this beautiful like song about like young romantic love and hope and reflecting on your past and hoping for something better in the future. And the way that Rachel Zegler like lives in the hope of this and is so brilliant and shines like a star. It is her most star shining moment in the show. And she opts up and she's going for all these crazy, incredible vocal choices. And I just think that she does have like one of the most incredible musical theater voices. And my problem with the song has always been that like it's a song set in a car, and so the actor has no choice but to be sitting down the whole time. Well, you're not going to stand up in a car. What, is the top open? Is it a convertible? That'd be dangerous. But that she can give so much while sitting the whole song. It is just a testament to her skill as a performer that she's able to give so much in her body and her face and her vocals while being sitting down the whole time. And then you follow that with what I think is Ben Platt's best moment in the show, which is Nobody Needs to Know, the song where we find out that, spoilers, he cheats on Kathy with his agent. Ew. And it's this very somber song, and he's just crooning and like belting out these like deeply sad notes, while also like singing about how like no one needs to know about this secret, but also like but also this is what I want, and it's more important that I get what I want now. And it is just like truly the moment where you're like, Jamie is such an asshole because he's still singing about himself in this like very flowery narrative way, because Jamie as a character is a writer, and it's like he still cares about being the best writer rather than caring about being a good partner to his wife, who is doing summer stock in Ohio. Come on, give that lady a break. She's already been through enough, man. And it goes back to what I said earlier about Rachel being best at her high moments and Ben being best at his low moments. And thankfully, more high moments exist for Kathy at the end of the show, and more low moments exist for Jamie at the end of the show. And so that's why I think that I really did enjoy the second half of the last 5 years more than I enjoyed the first half. But that's just a general note for the show in general. I've always felt that way about the piece. I just think that it is this version lined up with my preconceived notions of like, yes, this is also when these performers are also at their best in the show. So to wrap it up, I really did like this. I know I was maybe more negative than I wanted to be in this, but that's because I care about this show a lot, and I think that there's a lot of really interesting things you can do staging wise. I think I maybe was hoping for more, but it was also the Hollywood Bowl, and I don't expect the Hollywood Bowl to be doing like the most avant-garde shit. I expect them to be doing really good concert performances of really well-known pieces with really talented people, and I'm glad I came to that. I'm glad I didn't spend more than $25, but I am glad that I spent $25 on a nosebleed seat just so I could move closer to a non-nosebleed seat that was empty, about 15 minutes into the show. Secret hack for you. Please don't ban me, Hollywood Bowl, but that's usually what I do. And if you didn't get to make it out to this version of The Last 5 Years, don't worry, because at the very end of the show last night, Jason Robert Brown, Rachel, and Ben came out to announce that there is going to be a live album released of this show. And honestly, thank God, because that was truly the best thing about this version, more so than the staging, was the quality of the vocals, the health of these two performers. I mean, Rachel Zegler has one of the healthiest voices I've ever heard, and Ben Platt has just one of like the most dynamic ranges vocally that I've ever heard live. And so the fact that at least this version of the show, even if it doesn't ever get like a fully staged Broadway version, is at least going to get a live album version, I think that's a perfect way to celebrate 25 years of The Last 5 Years. I'm so happy that it has grown so much over the decades. I mean, what gay teen from the year 2013 doesn't remember finding this original cast album on probably at that point, well, not Spotify, probably came up on my Pandora radio or iHeartRadio or something, and I thought that this show was so niche. I thought it was so cool for being like the one little gay guy in Oakdale, California who knew what The Last 5 Years now. It felt like my little secret. But I think there was a lot of people who felt that this show was so unique and was such a little secret because it is so unique in its concept. I'm happy that it has scaled up to a venue as large as the Hollywood Bowl and can garner an audience that large, because I do think it is if not the best Jason Robert Brown musical, certainly my favorite. I still think his best is probably Parade, but my favorite is The Last 5 Years, purely for the nostalgia reasons of it all. So I'm glad that this 25-year anniversary proved that the show has so much staying power and is still so important and so loved by so many people. So that is my review of The Last 5 Years at the Hollywood Bowl. If you got to see it, let me know in the comments. If you got to see it when it was just in London a few weeks ago at the Palladium, let me know. Or if you are going to see it at Radio City Music Hall in New York next week, also let me know. And let me know what's your favorite Last 5 Years song. Are you Team Jamie or are you Team Kathy? I want to know. Also, are you Team Rachel or are you Team Ben? Or are you Team Jason Robert Brown? Or are you Team Jeremy Jordan and Anna Kendrick in the movie? I still think the movie's really good. Although I've never actually gone back and watched it a second time, but I remember really liking the movie version a lot. So many things you can do with this show. It can be on screen, it can be on stage, it can be in your ears, which it will be when the album comes out on the 20th. Anyway, that's all I have for this one. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.